Welcome to another podcast of Mad in Love. If you are new here, I'm Dr. David Hawkins from the Marriage Recovery Center and the Emotional Abuse Institute. Today, we are going to be talking about an assessment tool that I created called the NEAI. Please remember that acronym. It stands for Narcissism and Emotional Abuse Inventory. And joining me today is Dr. John Hudson, and he has co-created this instrument. He was a huge part in creating this instrument, this tool that I'm so excited about. It's going to help everyone get a better handle on what exactly is this thing called emotional abuse, and how do I know if I've got it? How do I know if my mate has it? So thank you for joining me. How are you today? I hope you're well.
I am wonderful. I'm excited about this topic as well. We've put a lot of work into this, and it's a different approach to assessment. Historically, in this realm, it's been pretty informal. We have this list of traits, and people look at, okay, does this exist? And you're limited to this yes, no, and it's not quantifiable. So the purpose of the NEAI, as you mentioned, is to better get to the crux of the problem. So does it really exist? Is it just based on my opinion, or is it truly accessible?
Dr. Hudson, I love that. I love what you just said. So I want to offer to everyone who is watching this podcast. By the way, we're going to have a link available so that you can learn about this instrument. But yeah, it's an instrument to help you figure out what is going on in your relationship. And, any of us, Dr. Hudson, I presume you would agree that anytime we have symptoms of something, when my body is doing some weird things, which it does on occasion, I want to know what's going on.
Right.
Do I have something? Is it identifiable? And when I go into the doctor and he says, yes, you've got something, and I got good news and bad news, David, they'll call me and they'll say, the bad news is you've got some symptoms of XYZ. The good news is I know what you've got, and
Right.
there is medicine for it. So would you agree that this is a tool that we can say to people, this will help make things clear? Comment on that, Dr.
Absolutely.
Hudson.
That's. I mean, of course, as we've talked about, that's been the purpose of establishing this, is to say, okay, where's the clarity? It's instead of being so unclear. It's not really what I want to say, but sort of being finite, right? We're not ever going to be there, but certainly getting to a finer point of where is the problem, how does it exist, and then certainly then giving people the opportunity after this assessment to say, hey, here's where you can get some help.
Well, great point, because notice in my story, when I go to the doctor, I've got these vague symptoms, or to me, they don't form any kind of a constellation. I've got, my stomach hurts a little here, my head hurts a little there, my whatever. And this trained person then says, oh, yeah, okay, those symptoms form a pattern. And yeah, now I can help you with some treatment. And the bad news is you've got XYZ going wrong. And the good news is I know what you've got going, and I can help you figure out what kind of treatment to have. Can we do the same thing, Dr. Hudson, regarding narcissism and emotional abuse? Is it possible, using this tool and our skills, to help the picture become clear? I'm going to use that word again and again, by the way, the word clarity, or making things clear. Is it then possible, after you've made things clear, to then form some opinions about that thing or that problem, which in this case is emotional abuse and narcissism, is it then possible to then develop a treatment pattern, a treatment program for that problem?
Absolutely. And the finer point you can put on where the problem is contributes to that treatment plan and how specific you can make it. The way we use this instrument is invaluable in that. It's not just a one-off. In other words, a husband or a wife completes the inventory for their spouse. We encourage 3 people to complete the inventory. So invite others around you who know you well to complete the inventory. So there's a more well-rounded summation based on that. Those multiple inventories completed. Now, not everybody does that, but certainly the opportunity exists for that to happen. And it's a much better picture if we get that.
Yeah, we want, and that's one of the hallmarks of the Marriage Recovery Center and the Emotional Abuse Institute, that we've had a lot of experience at this, so we see things again and again and again. That's why you and I created this. We see these patterns, and we're gonna start going through, I don't know, maybe a sampling of some of these items, why we chose them, and how do they fit in? What are the patterns that we're looking for? And like you say, we ask for input from multiple people. In the field of business, by the way, you know this too. In the field of business, there's these things called 360-degree reviews or up-down reviews or different kinds of ways of getting input so that someone can be told, look, we've had an up-down review, we've had a 360 review. We can tell you with some accuracy, here are your strengths. Here are your weaknesses. We want you to succeed. Anyway, the NEAI, we want that to work in a very similar way. We're not out to shame, blame, ridicule anybody, but come on, let's make the unspoken spoken. Let's make things clear. There I'm using the word again, making things clear. And when we do that, Dr. Hudson, you can't change what you don't own. So if we don't bring these issues to the surface, if we don't create a clear vision and a clear constellation of what's happening, we can't treat it. So I think it just becomes imperative that you and I and other clinicians and people, that they would say, come on, let's take the NEAI. Not that we much really want to talk about this stuff, but we need to talk about this stuff.
That's right.
So any further thoughts on that, the value of this?
Well, I would speak to the value of it because it's our effort was to make sure the instrument that we've created, and I'm calling it an instrument, as you and I have discussed, an inventory, is that we seek validity and reliability. Now, this is not a published instrument yet, but that's certainly a goal that we want to put that out there. But for now, we've kind of done our own internal review of what needs to be in the instrument, and from the narcissistic side, of course, we look at the NPD traits. And the statements and their questions in the inventory are aligned with that. Now, you're not going to be able to walk through the instrument and say, oh, I see this section is about lack of empathy. This section is about exaggerated sense of self-importance. They're purposely scattered throughout the inventory, just as you would create an inventory, to make sure that it's valid and reliable in that perspective, that you may ask the same sort of question a couple or 2 or 3 different ways. But so this 40-item instrument is 40 items for a reason. We're not just asking about, the 9 NPD traits or a certain number of characteristics of emotional abuse. That's a little bit too straight towards and lends itself to more of an opinion versus an assessment.
Speak a little bit more. I agree with you that right now this is a new tool, everybody. It is. We make no bones about that. It's a new tool. We made it because there's very, very, very little out there. So we think that you all can grab this tool and use it. But speak for a moment to, well, you use some terms that folks won't necessarily know. You use the term validity and reliability, and I agree with you. We don't have those built in scientifically, but I mean, they speak to what validity does this instrument have. It's not tested. We haven't run all the tests and so on, but can you say that it has some, what's it called, inherent validity and inherent reliability? You want to speak
Correct.
to that a little bit?
Correct, and that just means that it's sound, that it's factually sound and logical. Not necessarily that it's legally or officially binding, but that it's stepping towards that. In that you can trust that the results speak for themselves. Now, of course, the big picture there is if you say you want 3 people to fill out the inventory on your behalf and they're your 3 best friends, is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. It has to be 3 people.
Okay.
It's going to have to be 3 people around you who are objective, who are maybe they're kind, but they're also truthful, right? So we do encourage the spouse to fill it out, but who else around you is able to do that? Maybe it's a confidant, a mentor, a pastor, or someone who is going to speak freely and objectively and answer the inventory. So that contributes to the validity, the reliability. The validity validity, if I can say that, is more scientific, and we have to do more work on our end to get there on that. To your point earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can imagine some people saying right out of the gate, yeah, nobody else sees the stuff that I see, that, the partner of the narcissistic individual. And so, very true, very true. So, I mean, I think the strongest voice we want is the voice of a partner. And we
Absolutely.
want the voice of the person who's taking it as well. But, come on, emotional abuse and narcissism, they play out in the shadows of life. And so a lot of people don't see it. They don't feel it. They don't experience it. But boy, and when we start going through some of these questions, you're going to see why we're saying what we're saying.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Dr. Hawkins.
Again, just to kind of go to the top.
Sorry.
Yeah, back to the top of our podcast, I want to just remind people. So this is the NEAI, the Narcissism and Emotional Abuse Inventory. And Dr. Hudson and I created this, and it considers overlapping phenomena consisting primarily of emotional immaturity, defensiveness, and self-centeredness. And anybody that is going to take this inventory or going to take it for someone else probably is experiencing some of this stuff that we see regarding emotional immaturity, being easily defensive, being self-centered, and subsequently leading to emotional abuse. So, in fact, another quick comment, and then Dr. Hudson, weigh in on this. What I have found is the referrals that we get at the Emotional Abuse Institute, they've come to us because they're experiencing horrendous problems. And so when I see their answers, depending on how the question is worded, it's either, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yes, 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 often, 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 or maybe the question's reversed and they'll go, never, 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 never. It's pretty rare for me to see, some of the time this and maybe a little that. I don't know what that says about our item creation, but it is like Oh yeah, oh yeah. Any comments, Dr. Hudson, on that? What you've
Oh,
seen so far?
I absolutely agree with you. The clientele that have been drawn into to our work already know what's going on basically, but they just haven't been able to put their finger
Yep.
on the specifics. And when they encounter an inventory such as this one, they're very clear in their answers. It's either it doesn't exist at all,
Yep.
or it does exist and it's there all the time. Al, and to your point earlier, it is important that the spouse respond to this inventory. That is the person who knows you best, who knows your worst and your best. And as you know, and
Yeah.
you've written a lot about this, and we talk about this all the time.
Yep.
Typically, the narcissism that we're talking about is covert narcissism, which is different inside the home or in a very
Mm.
close relationship than it is outside in the community. So that's why it wouldn't be good for someone who is not objective to complete the inventory on your behalf or on your spouse's behalf. It just won't work. So that's a really important point, about who completes the inventory.
A quick question, Dr. Hudson. Do you think it's possible for the person with NPD? They've got the NPD or NPD traits. Is it possible that they would use this tool as a weapon against their victim? Might they, minimize their own? Well, you've got this stuff too, and you've got that, and you're the one. It's you, not me. Might someone be? I think there's a phrase called weaponizing. Might they weaponize this tool? Do you think, or is that pretty rare?
I think it's prevalent, and you know that as well, that they will use this instrument or others like it to make their case for their victimhood. And one of the traits, of course, is playing the victim, right? And saying, oh, you did this,
Mm,
I did that, but you did it first, or you did it worse, or you do it more. So certainly they could, but that's the beauty of having more than one person complete the
hmm.
inventory. That's why that's so critical, because
Yep.
two or three voices that are consistent in how that inventory scores, speaks a stronger message.
You just brought up, this is a bit of a tangent, Dr. Hudson, but as you were saying that, in my experience, the victim of emotional abuse, I don't think I'm going to use the gender she. It's what we most often see. It's not what we always see. We see
Right.
men who have been victimized as well. I don't typically find a victim to weaponize an instrument like this. They may be passionate, but I don't hear them weaponize it the way you just described it. Is that a fair? I have to think that through. I'm not sure I'm being fair about that. I see many victims who are going to endorse a number of the items that we're about to talk about, but they don't weaponize it. Is that what do you think about that?
I agree with you. That's why I'm saying the perpetrator would more often be the one who would
Yep.
weaponize the
Yep.
instrument, but not the victim. The victim often is coming from a place of
Yeah.
pain and hurt, and I just want answers. I just want a
Yep.
solution. I just want change. I want difference, and so he or she is completing the inventory with hope, um, with the desire for change. Maybe they've lost hope. I shouldn't say that, but maybe they have. But certainly with an ear and an aim to solve the problem, figure out what the problem is, identify it, name it, and approach it from that perspective. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Dr. Hawkins, that a
Mm.
victim would not weaponize this, not the way we described before.
That is so. It's so important what you just said. That's just, I don't want to go off on more of a tangent on that, but I just want to underscore that for everybody to hear that. And we trained clinicians, we can hear the difference. We can hear the difference, and there is a difference whether a perpetrator's voice and a victim's voice. And with enough training and experience, which Dr. Hudson and I have, and our whole team at the Emotional Abuse Institute and Marriage Recovery Center, we've got this extensive experience. I just think, Dr. Hudson, that was just so important what you just said. The voice is very, very different. So, all right. Without further ado, let's give everyone a sampling of some of the questions and why we chose them. Why, and we don't have time to go through all 40, but maybe we'll pick 5 or 6, Dr. Hudson, and let's just start with the very first one. And why, I'm going to put you on the spot. Why did you create this question? So, when facing conflicting opportunities, this other person considers others' feelings and preferences and even defers to them. I'll read it again. When facing conflicting opportunities, the person in question considers others' feelings and preferences and even defers to them. All right. Well, we've got the answer could be none, rarely, some, often, most of the time.
Exactly. And then scale to 1 to 5 in that order.
Why do we have that in there?
Because we know that a narcissist or an emotional abuser will not defer to another person. They will not consider others' feelings. It's all about them. So this statement is foundational to this inventory, because when they're confronted with differences of opinion or different ideas, they may put on the air, Dr. Hawkins, of, well, give me your feedback. Tell me what you think. But they've already decided they're just putting on airs, and they'll blow right past it to their best idea, because their idea is always best. So that one, I know I spoke maybe too much about it, but that is why that one's there. So, yeah.
So important. And again, the answer, this is only 1 of 40, but you can tell where, okay, so the person, if they've got emotionally abusive traits and patterns and narcissism, do they defer to others? None, not much. Do they consider others' feelings? Not really. Do they consider the other's preference? No, not much. All right. Question number 2. The person in question insists on agreement with their opinions, perceptions, and desires. So they does this person force agreement? Are they coercive? Are they demanding?
Right.
Are they dominant?
Powering over.
Why do we put that one in there?
It's
powering. Speak to that.
Exactly. It speaks to powering over. Again, their opinion, their perception is reality. I remember working with a client once, and he would. This was in a joint session. I remember this very distinctly. And we were discussing understanding each other's perceptions. And he said, well, let me hear your perception. He was speaking to his wife, and I just happened to be there. And so she spoke her perception, and he said, well, now let's talk about reality. Let's talk about reality. So so what he was totally dismissing her perception, because his perception is reality. So that's what number 2 gets to there.
Well, I think number 3 is going to be obvious. The person tells others what they should, emphasized by me there. This person in question tells others what they should think, what they should feel, and what they should want. All right. Why did we word it like that? Why is that in there?
Again, because your feelings don't matter. they're not really real. Your desires are not aligned with where we need to be, for instance, in a marriage, or what you're thinking is irrelevant or inaccurate or untruthful. Let me share the truth with you of what you should feel, what you should want, what you should desire. And that is absolutely from that narcissistic mentality.
And should is a coercive word. It's
Yes,
you should be like this. You should think this way. You should be what I think you should be. You're an extension of me, right? And no, I'm not an extension of you.
No, I'm an independent
I'm an
person.
individual,
I can think for myself, right? And this doesn't allow for that. This kind of person, this kind of mentality doesn't allow for that individuality, that independent thinking. It has to line up with me or it's not true.
So the next one takes us down. I'm going to jump to question number 5. It takes us down a slightly different road. When facing conflict, especially with this person in question, he or she manages their emotions and seeks solutions benefiting all. So here you've highlighted 3 concepts. One, when facing conflict. Okay, so let's everybody get that in your mind. When you're facing conflict, there's a divergence of opinions. He wants to turn left, she wants to turn right, or anyway, there's a conflict. How does she do or he do at managing their emotions? A. B. Do they seek solutions? Do they collaborate on solutions that will benefit everybody? Do they think expansively and creatively and something that it'll be a win-win-win for everybody? All right. What I've kind of already already led the witness here, but
yeah.
Why did we have that involved here?
Well, of course,
Dr.
Hawkins, what you're describing is the healthy person. Is one who is considerate of others' thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and considers all of that and seeks a compromise, which is a foreign word to most narcissists and emotional abusers. Compromise doesn't exist in their world, right? So this person seeks compromise. This seeks a solution. It's the opposite of a narcissist or an emotional abuser.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Going off on this tangent, this other person, question number 6, this other person gives agreement, permission, acceptance, and does not punish, or we could have used the word does not retaliate against the other person for not doing or for doing what they agreed upon. So they give agreement, permission, acceptance. They do not punish.
Right.
What's the point of that one?
And again, that speaks to the person's consideration, the subjects that you're doing the inventory on, their consideration of the other party or the other parties, right? That we've agreed on something and then it'll just turn around and do their own way after the decision's been agreed upon, right? So this speaks to a person who does do that, who says, okay, I'm going to stick to what we agreed to. That's what we've compromised, we've made a decision, and that's what we're moving forward with. So again, the opposite of what some, not all, but some narcissists and emotional abusers will do is make an agreement, come to a decision, a compromise, and then just blow right through that and do what they want to do anyway. Right.
Dr. Hudson, I find myself telling this story in every podcast. So listeners, and you've heard this story so many times, but this is a moment to tell it again, where I'm sitting with this couple, Dr. Hudson, and the woman lowers her head in her hands and starts sobbing right in the middle of a marriage intensive. And I asked, what's going on? And she said, everything is so difficult. Everything is difficult. He is so non-agreeable. He's not agreeable. Like, all I want is agreement, and I want to make agreements that I can count on. I want life to be predictable. I want it to be easy. It's so easy with my friends. It's so easy with my children. It's so easy with my parents. It's easy with everyone, and not him.
Not him.
Speak to is agreeability a word? But speak to agreeability and what we're looking for in this whole inventory.
Absolutely, it's a word, and it speaks to the person's ability to consider the other person, if not first, at least as an equal, right? And what we experience, unfortunately, and I've had that same encounter. In fact, I think you and I had this encounter together when we did an intensive, where she's sitting there sobbing and frustrated, and he wasn't even aware that there was a problem. He wasn't even able to see her pain in that moment. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're trying to isolate here.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So, and what we're looking for here, someone with NPD traits, they may actually give some kind of assent to this other person, to their mate's feelings, but not really give them emotional space to feel those feelings, to sit with them. Speak to that. Speak to the ability to sit with another person's pain, to experience that pain, to actually say those three magic words. The three magic words, by the way, are tell me more. But do so only with your own risk, because if I say to my wife, tell me more, she will.
Right.
Like,
that's right.
So, I better, if I'm going to say, tell me more, Christy, I better be willing to sit with have the emotional space. Speak to emotional space and how that relates to emotional maturity and how that relates to emotional immaturity and narcissism.
It's interesting. I don't think it's coincidental that I was meeting with a couple today, and we went through the one pager on emotional maturity. I think you're familiar with what I'm talking about. And doing an informal assessment of themselves, not each other, of themselves, about accountability, about being transparent, about accepting criticism or not. And I think that's certainly relevant to what you're asking here. A couple of our other items on our instrument further down talk about things like this. The subject is able to name and share feelings effectively. That's number 18, I think. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
Let's see. The subject uses the private and intimate things his or her partner has shared with him or her inappropriately or appropriately. Appropriately would mean I would hold space, right? I would honor what you've shared with me in confidence. I would honor and respect what you're sharing with me, as it's important to our relationship, instead of exposing it and exposing you in the process and calling you out and holding it against you, right? That's what you're speaking about right there. The unhealthy person does not do that. They just don't hold space.
Okay.
They don't connect with the emotion. They just don't.
Speak to another item here. Is the person in question is open, receptive, and makes it easy to give critical feedback. And I'm going to chuckle because, like, oh my goodness. But you're going to speak to this person. Now, by the way, I mean, my goodness, any one of these questions, everybody, one of these questions, one, we got 40 for you, but one one will take you down the royal road to figuring out what in the world is going on here.
Right.
So this is one of the ones. If you only want to grab one question off this inventory, grab this one. The person in question, my mate, is open, receptive, and makes it easy for me to give them critical feedback. All right. Why would we include something like that on this inventory?
Because it speaks to the person's willingness to understand themselves from your perspective. Their willingness to hear from you, their spouse, who knows them like no one else, no one knows them better, and gives them the feedback they need to be a healthier person. People don't offer, typically, especially the victims we encounter, don't offer feedback to or criticism to control or demean their spouse, but to build them up.
Oh, so good, so good.
They do it to build them up and grow them, not to tear them down. The opposite of what a narcissist would do, or an emotional abuser.
Oh, Dr. Hudson, this stuff is what you're saying is so good, and I love what you're saying because it delineates. It will just everybody. We just want you to get a handle on this stuff, and you can hear that Dr. Hudson's got this. The victim is bringing this stuff to your awareness, to whoever in their world. They're bringing it to their awareness because they're really pleading, please, I want to make a connection to you, and the perpetrator is saying, no, get off my back. Leave me alone.
That's right.
They're very different voices.
Yeah.
So, but back to the question, they make it easy because they're open, which is what mature people are.
That's right.
They're receptive, which is what mature people are. And they make it easy to give critical feedback. Not that any of us really love it, but like we get it. It's part of the deal. It's part of the price of admission.
Right. And I love that.
All right.
Part of the statement.
Another one. This is a couple.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
no, go ahead.
I love
Dr.
that. Make it easy, which means they invite it. They don't wait for it to come. They don't wait for the criticism or the feedback. They say, give it to me. I want to be a better person. I want to grow. I want us to have a better relationship, a better connection. And so they invite the feedback, right? That's what you mean by easy. That's what we mean by easy.
There's another thing we're doing for folks right now, Dr. Hudson. And it's an invaluable service. And we're here to talk about the NEAI, but we're also trying to help everyone understand and compare and contrast. So let's just take the last question. Compare and contrast. So meaning you can think about what relationships you have where the other person is open, receptive, and they make it easy to give critical feedback. And some of you are going like, that doesn't happen, nothing happened in my home. Got it. But that's what health looks like.
That's right.
So please, all of you have a clear distinction with here's what I'm living with. Mm-hmm. Here's what health looks like. Yeah. So this inventory, Dr. Hudson's going to make some people kind of go like, the next one, question number 9, Dr. Hudson. Again, everyone, if you want to grab one question, and if you want to make that the question, you could use this one. This question says, the person in question blames others for his or her personal choices or behavior. In other words, they have a coat of Teflon as thick as anything. Nothing sticks. Not my fault. Didn't do it. Wasn't there. Don't know how it happened. Sure wasn't me. No. All right. What does this tell us if the person checks most of the time when I bring an issue to them, they blame someone else some other problem. They make an excuse. What does this tell us about emotional abuse and narcissism, Dr. Hudson?
Well, it speaks to accountability, of course, but and responsibility and taking ownership. As you read that, we could have put his or her personal choices, behaviors, or failures. Because if we had said positive outcomes, they'd be all up for that. They'd take credit for that, right? But they don't take credit or won't accept responsibility for any downfall or shortcoming in their life writ large, not just personal choices, but oh, woe is me. I lost this job because my supervisor was an idiot. It wasn't because I didn't go to work on time. I didn't do what I was asked to do. I didn't, right? It was because my supervisor was an idiot, right? That's the kind of thing you would hear, right?
So that brings us to, we'll cover one more question here, but this is so very important. And again, I know I'm just saying, boy, if you got one question, here's another one. The person in question receives the critical feedback and makes behavioral and attitude changes accordingly. Now, back to the last question. If it ain't my fault, if I wasn't there, if I don't know how it happened, I didn't do it, or I did it, but it wasn't that big a deal, there's nothing to change. And so you can expect that tomorrow I will be just like I was today. And next week will be just like it was last week. There will be no difference. And so you better expect that. And by the way, when I talk to victims, I talk this way, like, is he changing? Is she changing? All right. So the question here it is again, and you can tackle this one. The person in question receives the critical feedback, incorporates it, and then makes behavioral,
and
not just behavioral,
right,
and attitude, or might we say heart changes. And if the answer to that, what, Dr. Hudson, what if the person says, no,
never happens.
No, they don't receive critical feedback. No, they don't make behavioral change. No, they don't make attitude changes. Or the opposite. What if they can sit and say, actually, they can. When I think about some other people in my world. Anyway, why is this one so important?
Dr. Hawkins, you write a lot about this in your books. This is about maturity, right? This is about whether someone's stuck in that, forgive this direct comment, but that 6-year-old self that just can't accept responsibility for anything. Everything that goes wrong because of the people and their situation and something somebody said. And the difference you're describing here is someone who has grown beyond that and understood, I have personal responsibility for my choices, my behaviors, and what I bring to a relationship with my attitude, and sees that I can improve based on what my spouse tells me. That my spouse isn't giving me information my spouse is rather giving me information so that we can improve, so I can improve, because he or she wants me to be the better person, the more mature person that I can be. That's the healthy version of that, right? That's what you're describing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not typically what we.
Oh my goodness.
Encounter. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So I've got really good news and really bad news potentially, and then really good news. So the good news is that we're going to help you make things very, very clear. Very clear. This inventory, Dr. Hudson, I think we've done a good job. It's our first launch. We've done a good job. It's going to help everybody make things clear so you're going to know what you're up against. That's the good news. The bad news is you're going to discover what you're up against. And it may be kind of ugly, some of the things that you see, but it's there. You already know it. And then now the good news is that we're willing to help you with it all. So, all right. The NEAI, Dr. Hudson, thank you for being with me today, with us on the podcast. And my goodness, everybody, you can hear that he's got the voice of experience and understanding about this very, very complex topic. So, listeners, as always, if any of this resonates with you, please know that we are available to help you. If you would like to try the NEAI tool, Narcissism and Emotional Abuse Inventory, you can find it on our website by visiting www.marriagerecoverycenter.com. And as always, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please give it a 5-star rating and be sure to subscribe to our channel to be notified of new episodes. All right. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk again soon. God bless.